Squadron 42 finally got a brand new reveal. There's a load of footage here, and today I want to give you my thoughts and impressions on what we've seen. Now, Chris Roberts and CIG have announced that Squadron 42 is now feature complete. That means they're now in the polishing stage, getting the game ready for release. Of course, that doesn't give us any indication on when to expect the game to actually release. It still might be a fair way off yet. What we've seen so far does actually look really good. Although that said, in terms of gameplay, I'm not quite sure. I think some parts are going to be a bit hit and miss based upon what we've seen, but I'll get into that as we work through this video. The footage opened then with these, what I suspect will eventually become some iconic sci-fi ships, the F-7A Hornet. There's also some 2003 Battlestar Galactica vibes going on here. Let me know if you noticed that. And that includes some of those great musical flourishes. Now, throughout the demonstration, we got to see a whole bunch of activities, from sections set in space, just like this, sections set aboard spaceships, as well as ground combat, and even a section where players were using a boat to get around a river or a lake. There was also another section with EVA as well. It's looking then as though Squadron 42 is set to encompass pretty much every single aspect of the space sci-fi genre. And this opening really does set the stage. There's spectacular scale going on here, some truly huge ships and a whole fleet of them to go along with it. Now, the fleet is the Second Fleet. It's commanded by Admiral Bishop, who is played by Gary Oldman. The ship on screen right here, the UEES Gauntlet, is commanded by Captain McLaren, played by Gillian Anderson. Over the years, CIG really have played up the cast of actors that they've got for Squadron 42. Now, you as a player don't get to play anyone famous, unfortunately, but it does seem that you get to customize your character to a great extent. That means you don't necessarily get to play a fixed character such as Geralt of Rivia in Witcher. Rather, you get to set your own character, and there's a lot of options for that. I kind of like that touch. Another thing I like here is the UI we get to see. Those of you who play Star Citizen will recognize the UI right here. Overall, generally speaking, I do feel that the Star Citizen and apparently the Squadron 42 UI is very functional and pretty decent. And what's more, the fact it exists in world is always a nice touch as well. This is something I really liked with Dead Space. Now, throughout the footage, we got to see a lot of the game, and I was really impressed with this overall. There are some apparent performance issues there. You can see the frame rate wasn't too great travelling through that ship or that structure. But this is still early days, and CIG have got plenty of time to sort that out. Let's hope they do. Now, when it comes to space combat, CIG have had a lot of time to get this right. After all, it was one of the first things put into Star Citizen all the way back when Arena Commander released.
Ship AI has also seen huge improvements, with closer engagement distances and more varied behaviours. And with our new precision targeting mode, the action has never been as close.
So there's not too much that I can say about combat itself, as for those of you who have tried Star Citizen, you'll know how it plays out. The difference here is down to the AI and the way that's going to impact the combat. I think it's also important to keep in mind that combat in Star Citizen is largely a PvP focused, with some very small scale PvE focus as well. And this is an entirely different thing to a multi-pronged single player campaign. This is a very demanding level of combat, and I'm curious to see whether or not the combat model and the flight model can hold up to that. Stepping back from combat though, one thing is entirely clear: the environments, the space-based environments in the Squadron 42 all look absolutely stunning. These are some truly gorgeous locations. There's a nice mix from utilitarian designed areas right up to sci-fi fantasy styled areas. Now, something else that was brand new that we got to see for Squadron 42 is this. That is sections which take place on rivers and in boats. Now, not a whole lot was shown with this particular section, just simply the boat moving along, kind of getting out the way here to hide from an overpassing ship and then continuing on with its journey. Nonetheless, as short as this section was, it does really give an indication as to the scope of the game. Although, to be fair, it's also reasonable to point out that Call of Duty also has sections like this as well. And just look at the scale of the wall there as the ship flies up and over it. Moving on, I was particularly interested to see the first-person sections of Squadron 42 because this is very likely to be a huge part of the game. CIG spent some time focusing on how environmental interactions are going to be an important part, That means various puzzle solving activities and that type of thing. Again, very hard to give any comment on this particular area, but it's important that the game does have this, although equally important that it doesn't just feel tacked on or as though it's padding. So yeah, throughout the video I found gameplay really hard to judge, but what was really clear to me is the sheer quality of these environments. And yeah, in my opinion, each one of these looked really good. And that brings us on to the graphical improvements that CIG put on display. In fact, it's really important that CIG get the graphics right. Squadron 42 has taken so long to get developed that by the time it's released it risks looking dated. But that's clearly not going to be the case. We can see the before and after screenshots here, or the before and after footage, and things do look vastly improved. Lighting is just so important when it comes to gamers, whether they're single player or multiplayer. And for me, the lighting is really something that can make or break a game. It seems then that in this case at least based on what we're seeing here in the demo, the lighting does look spot on. But do let me know what you think about that in the comments section. In the end then, my opinion on Squadron 42 at the moment is somewhat torn. I've been very impressed with the graphics on offer here and the environments. The spaceships as well all look absolutely stunning, as do some of the rather unique moments, some of which we're seeing on the screen right here. We've also got a good idea of how much of the gameplay plays out in terms of, the FPS mechanics. We've tried that out in Star Citizen for a very long time. The Space Combat and Flight Model 2, we've got a very good idea how all that works. What's less clear to me is how well all of this is going to gel together. And that, to me, is the most important part of Squadron 42, as after all, it is a single-player focused campaign. So, as I said at the start, we've got no information yet on a release date, but I am looking forward to seeing more on this. Meanwhile, let me know what you think about all of this. I'd love to know your thoughts. The full video, if you want to see it, is linked in the video description. Otherwise, do check out my other videos from Star Citizen that I released just yesterday. I'll make sure to link those on screen, or at least in the video description right here. Do go check them out.